Hello and welcome to another edition of 10 for 10 on WTEN plus 10 sports topics with the News 10 sports team. I am Sports Director Griffin Haas here with sports anchor and reporter Brian Rudman. And Brian, we have a packed one today.
Oh my goodness. What a week.
A lot to talk about.
Busy
we got
week.
obviously a lot happening in the NFL. The hot stove is heating up. It has heat. It is on fire.
Oh, yeah.
But we start in the NFL with some local NFL news, and it just so happens to be my team, the Miami Dolphins, hiring Jeff Hafley, Siena grad. He played at Siena from 1997 to 2000 under head coach Ed Zaloom, but he didn't really play that much.
Right.
It kind of helped him get into coaching, as he said it before in the past, because he was hurt. So he spent a lot of time in the film room with Coach Zaloom, and he kind of fell in love with coaching football and going through the film room and all of that stuff. So Zaloom gave him his first job at WPI, which is a D3 school, and then he goes to UAlbany under Bob Ford. Zaloom recommended him to Bob Ford. He spent a couple of years there, 2002 to 2005, from the Capital Region and D3 football, and now he is the head coach of the Miami Dolphins. Quite a rise.
Yeah, quite the impressive story from background. I mean, playing at Siena and then coaching at WPI, who I think RPI plays on a regular basis every year for just to throw in another local tie.
Yeah.
And then coaching with Bob Ford. I mean, quite the rise and pretty quick rise. It didn't take him long to get to Boston College and then into the NFL from there.
Yeah, so a lot of stops along the way. And of course, he was most recently the defensive coordinator of the Packers for 2 years. He had a top 10 defense in both of those years. So I will just kind of summarize, because I've been doing a lot of work on the Hafley front.
Yeah.
Gladly so. I want to get to know my head coach. I am a Dolphins fan.
Nobody happier
so
about the local
and
hire.
I will say, let me just also first give the reaction of I think what as a Dolphins fan. First of all, there are a lot of on Twitter, you don't even look on social media, because there are a lot of people overreacting both positively and negatively.
Right.
Oh, what are we doing? What do we do? Whatever. And I still stand by, even though I like Jeff Hafley, you never know with a first-time coach.
Right.
You really never know.
No.
To judge and to leap to judgment is foolish. Just collect as much information as you want. So when I heard the news, I was excited that he had a local tie. I don't know if I was, jumping out of the chair necessarily, because I knew a whole lot of Jeff Hafley other than following along with his journey because he went to Siena. But the more I get to know him or get to read through things and watch videos about him talking football, I love the hire. Now, I talked to both Ed Zaloom, who was his coach at Siena and helped him get that start at WPI, and Bob Ford. And Bob Ford said a lot of the stuff as far as just, he was different in that a lot of grad assistants maybe aren't as focused on football. They like to party and do that kind of thing.
Sure.
Jeff wasn't like that. He was in the film room. He wanted to always do more. He was the first person in the office. So his work ethic immediately, set him apart. And Ed Zaloom, he told a couple of great stories. One of them was, he wanted to give him the job at WPI, and he basically said, Jeff, listen, I'm going to put you through an interview, but, we both know you're getting the job. He recruited him out of high school. They were very close. And he said, I want you for 2 years. You need to spend 2 years with me. That's what I ask of all my assistants, so you can kind of get to know things and then help me out the second year. And Jeff was like, I'm sorry, I can only do 1 year. And Ed was like, what do you mean you can only do 1 year? And he said, he's like, I'm on a fast track. I want to be the head coach of Notre Dame in 10 to 15 years. Now, again, this is a guy who is in his first job out of college, Siena College, and is in an interview for a D3 assistant coaching position, and is saying that he wants to be the head coach of Notre Dame in 3 years.
Shooting for the stars.
And Ed said, he was like, I looked at him like he had three heads. He's like, what is this guy talking about? But he's like, all right, I'm going to hire him anyway. Like, he recommends him to UAlbany, and he gets him on that kind of fast track. And then all of a sudden, years later, he's in the college ranks. Then he's in the NFL ranks. Then he becomes the head coach of Boston College. Boston College is the sister school of Notre Dame. So it's like he's kind of, while it's not the exact thing that he said,
right,
he's made it happen for himself. And then all of a sudden he's the Packers defensive coordinator. And then he's the Miami Dolphins head coach. So we saw how driven he was there. I think what also says a lot about Jeff Hafley as a person is that Ed Zaloom he told me that he had heart surgery over the last year and it didn't go particularly well. And Jeff, while being the defensive coordinator of the Green Bay Packers, where you have a lot on your plate,
right,
checked in with him every Friday, texted or called to see how Ed was doing. And Ed said, Ed Zaloom, by the way, grew up a Packers fan.
Right.
So we have a similar thing where I grew up a Dolphins fan. He's now a Dolphins fan, he told me. But like, he's like, I'm a Packers fan. You're a Packers coach. I need you to focus on the game. Focus on the game. Don't worry about me. Don't worry about me. Like, you got a lot of pressure. Don't worry about me. But that just showed the kind of person that Jeff is. And you know, Jeff, we're recording this on Thursday, and Jeff just had his press conference, and he won the press conference. He was awesome.
Yeah.
Made me want to run through a wall. I'm ready to go. He definitely has a presence about him. But he talked about and was asked about by someone from the AP in New York, like, what did you learn from Bob Ford and Ed Zaloom? And he certainly has not forgotten where he came from. And he talked about how he talked about first about how Bob Ford is one of the greatest to ever do it, and, you know, one of the most winningest coaches in college football, and, you know, how he grew the UAlbany program. And he talked from both of them, he learned how important it is to work hard and teach the fundamentals and do the little things. And it was kind of the basis of everything that he's built, obviously adding along the way. But that's like the foundation. And he said, that's what we want the foundation of the Dolphins to be, is based on those fundamentals and hard work. And he's like, he went a very unorthodox path.
Right.
Usually people who coach played some level of higher college football.
Right.
Even if they, you know, like maybe, you know, played a lot of
made
D3
those
football
high-level
at the most.
connections.
Like Nick Sirianni, I think, played D3, but like played a lot and whatever. He didn't even really play that much at Siena. So he had a lot, and Bob Ford was saying the same thing. That, like, he had a lot to overcome in terms of, you know, he doesn't have the traditional resume.
Right.
But he said, he's like, I wouldn't want it any other way because he had to work harder than everybody else to get where he is. So there's going to be no bigger Jeff Hafley fan than me, not only because of the Dolphins, but after hearing all this, he is a guy that I can tell just by talking to the people who know him and have impacted him, and he's impacted them, just how much he cares and how much he means. And he got very emotional when talking about his family and his dad who passed away, who was his first coach. And he just seems like such a great guy that I am, fingers crossed, hoping this works out. And I think it will. And their new GM is from the Packers and brought him over. And they seem to be very aligned. And it seems like the franchise has a good idea of where they're going for the first time in a very long time. Yeah, I just spoke a lot. Brian, you can speak now.
Yeah, I think. Well, just
a lot of thing about Jeff Hafley. That's my Dolphins rant.
First of all, we all know I'm a Jets fan. You know, in the division, I hope Jeff Hafley.
You heard it, Capital Region. Brian Rudman hates Jeff Hafley. I'm just kidding. He's rooting for him to fail.
I hope he does well, except when they play the Jets. He'll probably do very well against the Jets.
And that the Jets do better.
Because everyone does well against the Jets.
He interviewed for the Jets last year.
Yes, and we wisely went with Aaron Glenn.
Shout out Aaron Glenn.
Shout out Aaron Glenn.
Shout out.
We always find a way to bring it back.
You always have to shout out Aaron Glenn.
No, listen, I think, anyone in the Capital Region should be hoping that Jeff Hafley does well. I think that would be an incredible success story for both Siena and UAlbany. Just from a football perspective, a guy like Jeff Hafley is the type of guy the Dolphins need. Mike McDaniel can draw up a play about as well as anyone, but it just didn't seem like. We'll get to Harbaugh in a second, but like he talked about football guys. Jeff Hafley is a football guy and seems like he wants to bring in a really good culture, and that's seemingly exactly what Miami needs.
And I think one of the big things with Mike McDaniel was he was loved by the players, but he didn't really hold the players as accountable as I think they should have. And then when he tried to, I think this past year was a little too late. Like, you establish the culture from the minute you get in the door. And when you're too friendly and too, I think Mike will learn from that. And I think Mike will one day be a good head coach. That's for another time. Jeff Hafley is someone that is described as a connector. People love him, but he talked about it today. He's like, I learned early on how to have hard conversations with players.
Yeah.
And, you could tell a player you love them, but, you have to have tough conversations. Yeah. And I think that he is going to hold players accountable without having to be he's an old school guy, but also a little new school where, like, there's a little bit more appreciation for the player and love for the player. It's not going to just be, we're running sprints and we're going to be hard on everyone. But he knows how to hold them accountable. Yeah. And I think just more than anything is going to be setting a culture right off the bat. And as a Dolphins fan, and we don't need to get too much into the minutia of the Dolphins, but, like, they have been kind of a track team with a quarterback, and their offensive line and their defensive line. Their defensive line has been better over the last couple of years, but their offensive line has always been a problem. It got better last year for the first time in a very long time. But hearing both of Hafley and John Eric Sullivan, their new GM, talking about you need to build a team from the inside out and then find your quarterback, because John Eric Sullivan said, like, you find your quarterback and you don't have the rest of the team built, he's gonna get killed. And you see that with Justin Herbert or Joe Burrow and those sort of teams. So to hear, and also talking about building a team for the cold, and you're like, well, they play in Miami, but you win games in the cold late in the year. Yes. You need to be able to do that. Yeah. And I think his quote that John Eric Sullivan said was, fast can get slow, but big doesn't get small. And it's like, we will always be able to use our physicality, but speed in the cold isn't as effective. So, and I think Hafley, their alignment in that, and his, being a defensive guy, wanting to build a physical football team, the Dolphins need a more physical, blue-collar identity. Absolutely. They need to be a little less Miami in the Dolphins.
Absolutely. Well, you look at the teams in their division, take the Jets out because the Jets aren't competing for anything anytime soon, but you look at the Bills and the Patriots, those are two teams who play in the Northeast, outside, and at the end of the day, like to run the football. Even with Josh Allen on the Bills, the teams in the AFC East that find success year in, year out, even when it was Brady, the Patriots could always run the football and play defense. That's what works in the AFC East.
It absolutely does. And in general, I mean, we saw it when the Dolphins went to Kansas City and it was, -7 or whatever it was. Yeah. And their game plan was completely ineffective because they were a really fast team that is, like, all built on quick throws and this and that. And it doesn't work. You need to have you can have a little bit of that, but you can't be reliant on that. But the crux of it here, I was more sold watching the press conference. And listen, you can win the press conference, and Jeff Hafley won the press conference.
Right.
That doesn't necessarily mean wins and losses.
No, but it's better to win the press conference than lose it.
To lose. Adam Gase. Shout out Adam Gase, the eyes.
Hey, both of us went through the Adam Gase experience.
Yeah, but we didn't have to look at his eyes in that press conference.
That's true. That was scary.
That was terrifying. But anyway, I digress. He definitely won the press conference. It needs to lead to wins. But I feel, as a Dolphins fan, I've been feeling better as I've learned more about Jeff Hafley through people, talking to people. I definitely have wanted to root for him even more, but I was even more confident in his vision, I think, listening to him and John Eric Sullivan talking today. So we get to cover the Dolphins now, and that is a blessing in itself.
Yippee. We're just covering the entire AFC East
because we're going to have it all covered. We will move out of the AFC East and go to the NFC East with more coaching news. And not a ton with John Harbaugh. We knew he was going to be hired as the New York Giants coach, but wanted to mention it because he was introduced. And also, there was in the last week this weird kind of hang up where all of a sudden it was kind of in balance for like a couple hours.
Took a while to get that contract worked out.
Because seemingly he wanted to report straight to the ownership and not to Joe Schoen, which is a good idea when Joe Schoen has proven nothing.
Yeah.
And Harbaugh's already kind of made some sweeping changes in getting a lot of the guys who have been in training staff, whether it's coaching staff, all of the defensive coaches, I think, except for one, we're told they won't be here in the front office. People are changing roles.
Right.
And he's bringing new blood in there. And I think that's good because I think I saw someone, I don't know who it was, so I'm not going to be able to credit them, but say on Twitter that, like, you can pull out the root, but if the root is still in the ground and still poisonous, it's going to grow back. So if you don't take the root of the issue, which is a lot of the same people, they might be good people, they might be good at what they do, but it's been a lot of the same people in those front office positions over the last, however many years, getting some new blood with a guy who obviously has the credibility of a John Harbaugh and knows how to win a Super Bowl and knows how to bring a team back to the promised land. I think that's a good thing.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, the old saying of if it ain't broke, don't fix it. It is broken in New York for the Giants, and they need to fix it. And that's what John Harbaugh is doing. He's coming in, he's taking care of what he views as issues. He's, clearly, he wants control, which when it's a guy like Harbaugh who has been there, done that, and who has taken a team repeatedly through multiple eras of success, that's the type of guy who you can say, okay, you are allowed to do this, and you are the type of guy who we trust to make the decisions that are best for this football team.
Yeah, and we'll move off of this one pretty quickly because we have so much to talk about. But I will say, too, and you can talk about your impression of it, but talk about it's not even winning the press conference because he obviously won the press conference, but his was so different in the fact that you mainly see guys up there pitching themselves. He was so comfortable up there.
Yeah.
He's like this. I am that guy.
Yeah.
And I am. But his quote, and we don't have it here, but look it up if you haven't heard it. The soundbite where he was talking about the guys who love football.
He said football about 20
he
times.
He said football in the span of a minute, maybe 35 times. Yeah. And it might have been one of my favorite quotes of all time, where he was like, because we're going to do football. That's what we do here. What is this building for? It's for football. We want guys that love football.
We love football.
We want you to come in. That guy loves football. He loves it. So, yeah, he won the press conference, and I think it's good that they're putting so much trust into him.
Yeah,
and let him fix these issues.
Yes.
We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we do not have an Aaron Glenn press conference moment of the week. We do have a Terry Pagula press conference moment of the week. What a presser for the Buffalo Bills. We'll talk about it next. All right, welcome back to 10 for 10. Well, I just kind of teased it on the other side. No Aaron Glenn press conference moment of the week, but we do have a Terry Pagula press conference moment of the week. Now, we'll get to that in a second. We'll just set the scene. Because we haven't had an episode since the Bills fired Sean McDermott.
No, it all happened last week.
It was so much has happened over the past week. They lose to the Denver Broncos. It's so much has happened that we're not even really going to probably dig so much into the game.
Which was a crazy game.
Which was a crazy overtime game in which a call.
Multiple questionable
calls. The Brandon
calls.
Cooks call. And I'm going to start there. So the Bills fire Sean McDermott.
Yeah.
And you could have just gone out there and said, listen, Sean did a great job here, but it's just we feel like we need a new voice. We thank him for setting the culture, but we just feel like we need a new voice in the locker room.
Yeah.
I think that's fair. I don't know if I necessarily agree with Sean McDermott or firing Sean McDermott, and I think it really is dependent also on who they end up hiring. We'll see and judge it at the end of that. But it could go either way. I can understand it. Instead of doing that, Terry Pagula said that he fired Sean McDermott as a basis of the result of the Denver Bronco game, which was a loss. Okay. Then he went on a whole rant blaming the officiating for the loss of that game. Now, if you remember, Brandon Cooks, I think it's a 50-50 play. I lean more towards catch. I know you lean more towards not catch. We don't need to litigate a catch right now. Because that's going to just, we'll be here for
We could be here for an hour talking about that play.
You could see it either way.
Yeah.
But he basically pointed to that call as the reason that they lost the game.
Yeah.
Well, then it doesn't really sound like coaching lost you the game because it's the officiating. So somebody asked, well, if it's the officiating's fault, why are you firing Sean McDermott? And he's like, well, we just hit a playoff wall. Those things don't really line up.
Right.
So you can't really say we're going to fire him as a result of this, then blame the officials, and then fire Sean McDermott. Before we get to the press conference of the moment of the week, I'll get your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I think it's. Listen, I agree with you 1,000%. Where if they had just come out and did what the Knicks had done after last postseason, where it was just, listen, we think that our coach has taken us as far as he can. Sean McDermott did a phenomenal job.
Yeah.
He reset the culture. In year one, he broke their 17-year playoff drought. And, and then Josh Allen coming in has put them into Super Bowl contention. He's opened their Super Bowl window.
Yep.
And when you have the best player in football, that's what that does. All he had to say is he reset the culture. We thank him so much. We're in a Super Bowl window, and we just feel like he hasn't been able to push us over the edge yet. And that's all you have to say, because they haven't won the big game this season. They didn't reach their potential this season.
Yeah.
And not all of that's on McDermott, but it's easy enough to say, listen, here it is.
I think that there were other years that were more
Yes.
McDermott's fault. Like,
Yes.
I felt like the roster this year, which we didn't even mention that Brandon Beane
Got
promoted from general manager to president of football operations. I said on this show a couple weeks ago that, like, if it doesn't go well, everyone's talking about McDermott. Somebody should keep an eye on Brandon Beane because he hasn't addressed the wide receiver position.
This year, more than any, has been.
The defense was thin. Like, they were clear. Their drafts have not been good.
Right.
Like, he's drafted 2 Pro Bowlers in his last, 50-something picks. So this year there were problems with the roster even more so than other years where I felt like maybe there were more in-game things that went wrong. Now, we talked about the wide receivers. Now we'll get to the press conference moment of the week. Because someone asked Brandon Beane about the failure to address the wide receiver room.
Right.
There was no specific names mentioned. Like, hey, you just, like, this guy got fired, you got promoted, but what about not addressing the wide receivers? Which, by the way, maybe then you wouldn't be relying on a jump ball to Brandon Cooks, who you picked off the scrap pile from the New Orleans Saints in the middle of the season. But that's for another time.
Mighty New Orleans Saints.
Yes, he had like 3 catches before that. More than that, but it was not a lot, like 10. All the reporter asked was about the wide receivers. Terry Pagula just stiff arms Brandon Beane and says, I got this one, bud, don't worry. And just has like a pretty scathing call out of Keon Coleman.
Yeah.
Which Keon Coleman is, second-year receiver, just caught a touchdown pass in the playoff loss. There are plenty of criticisms of him.
Right.
And I think a lot of people have talked about inside the building, there have been rumors about him just not being a very, very mature. And that's a big reason why he's not, getting to his potential. That's a fine thing to criticize. But Terry Pagula is all of a sudden just like, let me address the Keon situation. We're like, no one asked you to. He's like,
not where we were going with this.
The coaching staff was the one who pushed for him, and Brandon was not going to pick him. He wouldn't have been his next pick. He didn't want it. No. It was the coaching staff, and Brandon was being a team player, and he's taking a lot of heat, so I'm going to tell the truth. And everyone's like, dude, we didn't ask you about that at all. And Keon Coleman is still on the team. He's still on the roster right now.
Yeah.
Which is basically like, hey, by the way, buddy, our GM
doesn't like you.
Want you.
Which, by the way, there are multiple videos of Brandon Beane talking about how much he wanted Keon Coleman.
He's sitting at the scouting combine, and he ran like a 4.6, and he's like, I'm glad that he ran slow because that'll make it easier for us to draft him. There were other candid moments because they had, every team is getting, film these days on the process of him talking up Keon Coleman.
Yeah.
So I don't know if Beane put that in his head or what was going on, but it doesn't seem to be true. And even if it was, why would you want Keon Coleman to know that? Because if there's any way that Keon Coleman can grow, it ain't in Buffalo anymore.
Right. Yeah, it's such just a what are we doing moment. You look at that, and if I'm a Bills fan, I'm just going, what are we talking about here? Yeah. And, this team's success has kind of, it's changed the narrative on the Buffalo Bills in recent years. But before Sean McDermott got there, they were on a 17-year playoff drought? I know not all of that was Pagula. Yeah. But, you're coming in and now Pagula's making the type of comments that Woody Johnson makes, and you're starting to make it look like an embarrassment.
I don't think Terry Pagula is that far off from Woody Johnson, to be honest. And I am not one of the guys who's on the ground floor of the Bills all the time, but I've seen a lot of people tweeting, and they're like, this is why Terry hasn't been talking very much recently, because when you put him in front of a mic, he says things like this, and he does things like this, and he doesn't act like an owner should all the time, and he puts his foot in his mouth, and that's what he did again. And it is important to remember that before Sean McDermott got there, and a big part of it's Josh Allen, no doubt. They got the quarterback right. Before he got there, since like the Jim Kelly era, maybe into some Doug Flutie, the Bills were basically a joke. And they were dysfunctional, and they did stuff like this.
Yeah.
And I saw some reporters who have been there a long time saying, like, for the first time in a while, it felt like that kind of Bills, where it was just hints of dysfunction. And listen, they need to get the coach right. That's what it comes down to now. Nobody will talk about this. I mean, we'll still talk about it, but no one's going to like really harp on it if they get the coach right and they, win a Super Bowl or have continued success.
Winning cures all.
And just to rattle them off, they're interviewing Joe Brady, the offensive coordinator. They're interviewing Brian Dable, who was the offensive coordinator for the Bills, went to the Giants, obviously, as head coach there. I think I saw that they're interviewing Anthony Weaver, who
I believe
Saratoga grad, so we'll keep an eye on that. Maybe another local connection to one of our teams. They're getting to their interviews. We'll see. We'll see who they get, but it's got to be a good hire, and they need to. They lost some trust with the fan base, not only because of Sean McDermott, but the way it was handled.
Absolutely.
And how Sean McDermott was not talked about in a glowing light in that press conference. It was a lot of blame game as to why it's not Brandon's fault and it was the coach's fault. Yeah. One point, Terry Pagula was talking about how good the practice squad guys are. And, even the practice squad guys are good. It's because they're getting coached up. Like, what are we even talking about? So, not great, but we'll see who they get. We'll move on to the Patriots, the only team that's actually still playing.
Yes.
Well, we're not even talking the Jets this week. There's not much to the Jets.
Well, yeah,
so
there's no
the
point.
only team. But
we gave our Aaron Glenn shout out. We're good.
Shout out Aaron Glenn. Shout out Adam Gase. So New England Patriots take down the Texans. C.J. Stroud stinks. But the Patriots defense also is fantastic. You got to give them their credit. They win 28-16. Stroud 4 picks. Ugly.
Yeah.
But again, the Patriots just taking care of business at home. And now they go into Denver, which on paper, number 1 seed, you're going to play Denver. Like, that's a tough place to play. The only difference, though, is they are going to go up against Jarrett Stidham at quarterback, who has not started a game this year. Obviously, it's been Bo Nix. Jarrett Stidham has been the backup. He actually is a former Patriot. Does not have a ton of experience. I'm actually pulling up his stats just so I actually can see them. He's played in 20 games. He's, thrown 197 total passes, since he's been in the league, 8 touchdowns to 8 interceptions. Just a veteran, just a standard backup quarterback.
Career backup quarterback.
You can't really ask for more if you're the Patriots. Obviously, maybe if you could get the home game.
Right.
It's setting up, to me, for a Patriots Super Bowl. And you can talk about the easy path, and it has been easy.
Right.
Let's not get it twisted. They're taking care of their business, though.
Yeah.
But, I will say, Texans and C.J. Stroud in the playoffs, as well as who did they play first?
Herbert and the Chargers. Herbert with no O-line.
With no O-line. I don't know why I was drawing a blank on who they're playing. And then their regular season schedule was ridiculously easy. But you got to play who you got to play, and they've taken care of their business. And now they're going to go up against a backup, and you can't fault them for that.
No, you really can't. I think, people are going to say unless the Patriots go on to win the Super Bowl, people are going to say until next year and they get proven wrong that, the Patriots just had a really easy schedule and it was a cakewalk. And listen, did they have an easy strength of schedule? Yes, that's what happens when you come in last place. You get an easy strength of schedule the next year. Did they luck out with the other divisions they were playing? Yeah, probably, maybe. But it's not like they're just, kind of stumbling through these games. You look at the way they've played the last 2 games.
No, they're handling business.
They are winning in dominant fashion. There really haven't been many moments in their first 2 playoff games where the results were in doubt.
No,
it's
not
taken.
at all.
There have been a couple of moments where it's taken the offense a minute to settle into the game, but the defense has looked so unbelievably good.
Yeah, they've taken a huge step.
That it's just you look at it and go, the Texans were supposed to have the best defense. The Patriots look like they have the best defense in the league right now.
And they have like all the ingredients that you need. You've got the great defense, a quarterback who you're not paying yet, who's playing like one of the better quarterbacks in the NFL. They have a run game. Like their line could maybe be a little better, but it's good.
Yeah.
It's solid. They have good weapons. Like they're a built team led by a great head coach in Mike Vrabel.
Yeah.
I saw that the Titans were looking. I'm not even kidding. Diana Rossini reported that the Titans were looking for a coach with Mike Vrabel qualities. If only they could have had Mike Vrabel.
If only they could have had that Vrabel
Turned out
guy.
they fired him and hired Robert Saleh. Shout out Saleh. Shout out Jets.
It always comes back to the Jets, ladies and gentlemen.
Yeah, and listen, this is not a cakewalk. Also,
No.
we can't set this up as, hey, the Patriots are going to the Super Bowl. It sets up very nicely. It sets up as nice as it could. The Broncos defense is a top
That
3
Denver
defense.
defense is legit.
They're a top 3 defense in the league.
They forced, 5 turnovers against the Bills? 4 against Josh Allen?
He turned over.
He hasn't.
4 times.
He hasn't looked that like he hasn't lost the ball like that since probably his rookie year.
And listen, they pulled out a great win there, and that was their first playoff game. And again, they're also a team that hasn't had a really tough schedule, but they've taken care of business. Jarrett Stidham's going to be playing for the first time, but it would not be the first time that we saw a backup quarterback.
No.
It wouldn't be the first time that we saw a backup quarterback beat New England in a game like this. And I saw
true.
Nick Foles tweeted. Mm-hmm. He was like, don't worry, they struggle against backup quarterbacks because, he beat them in the Super Bowl. And so it is not a foregone conclusion because they're going to try to run the ball, put Stidham in good situations, and play defense. And that could work. The Patriots are favored by 4.5, which on the road in a playoff game is a decent amount.
Yeah.
That's not a ton. And I think it's still going to be a close game. I think the Patriots win because they have the better quarterback at the end of the day. But I think it could be still a field goal game.
Yeah, I mean, I think the thing is that Denver's proven all year, and this is not a knock on Bo Nix. I think he's a decent quarterback, probably mid-level, in terms of rankings, he's probably somewhere in the 10 to 20 range, just in general.
He's been clutch, but
they've won a lot of games where they haven't had the best quarterback on the field. They won last week where they didn't have the best quarterback on the field. This is still a really good Denver defense, a really well-coached team. Sean Payton is a brilliant offensive mind. He's going to find a way to move the football. And they're playing at Mile High. This is no cakewalk by any stretch of the imagination. Did it get easier because Bo Nix is out? Yes. You're playing a backup quarterback. Of course, it's going to be a little easier.
Yeah.
It's not like the Patriots just get to walk into Denver and then immediately book the flight out to California for the Super Bowl.
No,
they're gonna have to handle their business because this Denver team is still more than capable of winning this game.
And we'll see if they can. It's 3:00 kickoff on Sunday. It's the first game before Rams Seahawks. Could get another Patriots Rams Super Bowl.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Patriots Seahawks. Did they play?
Yes. Richard Sherman. They should have handed it Butler.
Malcolm Butler.
I was
gonna say, I feel like either one of those is a rematch, and it is. So if Patriots win either way, it'll be a Super Bowl rematch.
So
I was at the Patriots
Seahawks Broncos.
I was at the Patriots Rams. Yeah, I was at the Patriots. That was both were terrible games.
Yeah.
Seahawks Broncos was one of the worst Super Bowls ever.
Yeah.
They killed the Broncos, and then I was at the Patriots Rams game, and what was that, like 13-3?
Yeah, that was my freshman year of college, and I remember it was just like one of the more boring Super Bowls ever.
That game stunk. All right, well, hopefully these weekends, we've had some great games. Hopefully they don't.
These NFL playoffs have been phenomenal.
Fantastic, and we hope that continues. We got to take a quick break. When we come back, we have a lot of hot stove to talk about.
Oh, yeah.
Be back. All right, welcome back to 10 for 10. And there are a lot of people that owe David Stearns an apology. I don't consider myself to actually be one of them because while I was critical, I at least allowed let's see what you do. You made a lot of
theme on this show.
You let a lot of holes. Yeah, you made a lot of holes on this team. The baseball offseason is very long. It was a frustrating time to lose Pete Alonso and to lose Edwin Diaz and trading Brandon Nimmo, although I had less of a problem with that. And then to, miss out on Kyle Tucker, which was not their fault. They made a great offer. The Dodgers just swooped in. It was very hard to understand how this team could be as good or better with the holes that they created. Yeah. And then David Stearns filled those holes and made this team, I think, better than they were last year in a week, because he signed Bo Bichette right after losing out on Tucker, which, I mean, we had done that emergency podcast on the Tucker part. Then he signed Bichette the next day. 3 years, $126 million.
Great
Going to
pivot.
shift him over to third base. A guy who's a two-time All-Star, who's a lifetime batting average of like 295.
Yeah, great
He's like
hitter.
300 with runners in scoring position. He can hit 25, 30 home runs. Just a phenomenal hitter, and I think he's going to be better defensively actually at third base than shortstop. Some people have been worried about that because you move a shortstop to another position, it's an easier. Shortstop's the hardest position in the infield. So and his problem is range, which at third base limits.
You
the
don't
range
need
problem.
as much range.
It limits the range, especially when you have a guy like Francisco Lindor next to you. That helps. So they add him. Then a couple of days later, they fill the outfield hole with Luis Robert. They trade really not a lot to get him because he's getting paid $20 million. They have a club option for $20 million next year. They gave up a Luis Angel Cunha, who I like, but like just was never. I don't think he's.
There wasn't really a place for him on the team.
He's not an everyday player on like a great team. He's a guy who he hasn't even hit that well in AAA. I think the only thing that I really liked about him, the main thing I liked about him as a bench player was his speed. Off the bench, but Robert has speed as well. It's just now he'll be starting. And then they gave up a pitcher I had never even heard of, Truman Pauly. It sounded like a character in a novel. So that deal was fantastic in my opinion. Now Robert is a guy who hit like 220 with 14 homers last year. He had a down year. He's been hurt the last 2 years, dealing with some mechanical things. He was red hot in the second half. He hit like 295.
Right.
But this is a guy who like in 2023 hit 38 homers and hit just below 300 and was an all-star and looked like maybe a top 10 player. Like he was going to be a top 10 player in the game, position player. So if they can even get... The other thing is, people are like, oh, well, he didn't have... His down year last year was significantly better than the center field play the Mets got from Tyrone Taylor. And I like Tyrone Taylor as like an extra outfielder, but he does not hit enough. So the outfield production, even if he has his worst year, will be an increase. So that move, I think, there's a huge ceiling, low risk. Like there's not a lot of risk. If he doesn't have a good year, you don't have to pick up his club option. He walks. You didn't give up that much. If he has a huge year, you could pick up his club option and you have him back for next year. And obviously, he has a huge year. They weren't done.
No.
The Mets, the next day, while they're in... It was David Stearns' wedding anniversary yesterday.
Was it really?
Yes, it was. Wow. I saw this today. It was his wedding anniversary. In the morning, he introduced Bo Bichette to the media and they had the press conference. Later that night at 10 o'clock, hopefully after a nice anniversary dinner with Mrs. Stearns.
Got done with dinner.
Shout out Mrs. Stearns. He lands the ace that the Mets have desperately needed in Freddie Peralta from the Brewers. 17-6 last year at a 2.7 ERA. They gave up a lot. They gave up Brandon Sproat, who is a top 5 prospect in their system. He pitched he's a starting pitcher. He pitched 4 games for the Mets last year. He had like a 4 ERA, but he wasn't ready. They just needed arms. I think he's going to be a good pitcher, but I think worth it. And then Jet Williams is the other one, who is a top 50 prospect in baseball. But again, a guy who is getting ready to be a guy who can play at the major league level. And sure, he could maybe earn a spot in left field. It'll be him and like Carson Bench, another young guy. I think they value Bench more. And Tyrone Taylor competing for that left, and Brett Beatty competing for that left field spot. There was not a natural position. Sure, he could have played in center if Luis Robert didn't play. There's not a natural position for him to play. So how many times do we see organizations sit on these prospects until they don't have any value anymore? Clint Frazier, New York Yankees. Remember him? You can't trade Clint Frazier, and they just never played. So I like the move. Peralta is a rental. He's a free agent at the end of the year, but he's only making $8 million. And they got Tobias Myers, who started 2 years ago and was great out of the bullpen for them last year. So he's controllable for 5 years. They filled all of their needs in basically a week, and now are just in the tweaking stage. Shout out David Stearns.
Yeah, I mean, this was absolutely brilliant. I remember when we were on here for, our immediate reaction to Kyle Tucker, it was,
I was sad.
yes, you were sad.
Yeah.
You asked if any of it mattered.
Yep.
And the Mets have now brought in 3 really big impact players for not an incredible amount, right? They got Robert for a really good deal. Sproat is a good prospect, but, you get your
And they
ace
kept
that
Jonah
you
Tong, who they
desperately needed.
valued more.
Tong is probably the higher valued pitching prospect. And Jet Williams, I covered him quite a bit when I was in Binghamton, and Luis Angel Acuna. Both of those guys are up the middle infielders at their natural position. There was not really a place for them to be starting on this Mets team. So getting rid of them for this makes sense. You bring in a guy like Luis Robert, who, like you said, even on a down year at the plate, you're going to get great defense and a lot of speed out in center field. So even if he's not doing a whole lot at the plate, first of all, it's still probably going to be an improvement in the lineup. But you have a baseline, and I like bringing in guys like that, especially in a position like center field where you know what you're getting. You're going to get some form of value out of him no matter what. And if he hits, great, another huge bat in that lineup.
And we can't also understate that he was playing for the Chicago White Sox, and they were terrible. And
this is true.
He's their main guy. He's the 3-4 hitter. He is the guy that you need to get out in that lineup, and that puts a lot of pressure on him. And I think he struggled with that a little bit. He doesn't have to be the guy here.
No.
He's got Juan Soto. He's got Francisco Lindor. He's got Jorge Polanco and Bo Bichette and all of these guys. He could bat 6th or 7th in this lineup.
Yeah.
And that takes a lot of pressure off of him where he's going to be a dangerous guy when he is not the guy to get out. He's another guy that they have to get out.
You could also bat him in, say, the 2-hole in front of Soto and give him some protection so he's seeing good pitches to hit. It
gives them a lot of flexibility. And I think that he's prime for a bounce back.
Mm-hmm.
And then we'll wrap up, I guess, with, we're not even really talking about Bo Bichette. I was going to wrap up with Peralta, but Bo Bichette, to get an impact bat like that.
Yeah. Oh, it's huge.
They needed a guy who is on the level of Alonso. I think he's probably a better hitter than Alonso. He's not the power hitter that Alonso is, but he puts the ball in play. And that's the thing that we're seeing with this lineup outside of Robert, who is more of let's take a gamble. Soto, Polanco, Lindor, Bichette, these are guys that work professional at bats and put the ball in play and don't strike out a ton. Yeah. So I think that we're seeing an emphasis on that of let's just put the ball in play. So Bichette, I think, is maybe the biggest out of all of them because it really it made the whole lineup look better when you had a guy like that.
Yes.
But because we have a lot of topics to get through on not a lot of time, well, that's all I'll say about Bichette. And then Peralta, I think there's been a lot of the pitching was cost the Mets last year, and it did. They don't really need to add a bunch of starters. They have a lot of guys who I think, and some guys who will I think pitch better than last year. They needed a frontline guy to take the pressure off Nolan McLean. Because when you list it out, they now have Freddie Peralta, Nolan McLean, Clay Holmes, who had a good last year, and I think will have a better one now with more innings under his belt. They have Sean Manaea, who was hurt pitching through an injury.
Right.
Hopefully he bounces back. David Peterson, who was an all-star until he hit the wall in September, and hopefully, again, that is not the case. I think he's not what he was in September. So David Peterson, he was carrying them, and then all of a sudden everybody else was kind of catching up, and he hit the wall. Then they have Kodai Senga. Kodai Senga very well could get traded. I think that he might get traded. But that's 6 quality starting pitchers right there. And I haven't even gotten to Jonah Tong, who maybe won't break camp with the team, but I think we'll pitch with them at some point. And Christian Scott, who missed last year with Tommy John, but was a promising prospect for them and pitched for them the year before. So they have a bevy of arms now where maybe it's not as front heavy, but now it is more front heavy.
Right.
And then if your 5 starter is Manaea or Senga or Peterson, you're in a pretty good spot.
Yeah, I think with this rotation, you look at it, and it was a bunch of guys who were, you say, on a good day, they're probably a 2, but they could also be a 3 or a 4. And that was pretty much the Mets' entire rotation last year.
Yeah.
Now you bring in Peralta. He's your ace. He is an ace, a legitimate ace in the major leagues. And now you take the pressure off of everyone else. And not only that, this is a guy who now you can, I saw it last year with the Red Sox and Crochet. When you have a guy like Peralta, when you have an ace, you can pitch him 6 or 7 innings, and it affects the guy who pitches before him and the guy who pitches after him.
Yeah,
but your ace saves your bullpen.
Yeah.
And you get a guy, you can go to them earlier the day before and you can go to them earlier the day after, and it affects the entire rotation.
Yeah, we got to get to the Yankees, but Peralta, the one thing is he more falls in like the 6-5-6 because he throws so many pitches. He's a strikeout pitcher. Not saying he can't throw 7 innings, and maybe that's something they work on him with, but it does affect that. Also, he is kind of a borderline 1-2. Like, he is an ace, but like, I think the bigger thing, but he's also kind of right in that mix. He's a frontline guy.
Yeah.
But is he bona fide? Is he Tarek Skubal or
No,
Greg
no.
Garcia? No. He's the ace. He can be on the ace on a pitching staff that has a lot behind him. Nolan McClain might be the best pitcher on the team. He might still be, but he doesn't have to be now, which I think is the bigger thing. We'll move on to the Yankees quickly because they finally got Cody Bellinger in there. Listen, they needed to do it. This isn't a reinvent the wheel thing. It's running. They're more running it back.
Yeah.
I don't think there are going to be many other, if any other moves, except for maybe a starter for a trade for a starter. I don't think they're going to sign anybody to big money. That doesn't seem to be in their plans. But they needed to get Bellinger back. 5 years, 162. And credit to the Yankees, they stood pat at 5 years. Bellinger wanted 7 and Boris wanted 7. And they're like, well, then find someone who wants to give you 7 years. And nobody did. The Mets didn't want to. I don't think the Blue Jays wanted to, obviously. And Bellinger wanted to be a Yankee. His dad played there.
Yeah.
The Yankees wanted Bellinger. It made too much sense the whole time. It shouldn't have taken this long, but that's Scott Boras.
Yeah.
Now it's more so, do you think that running it back is enough? And that Trent Grisham taking the qualifying offer handicapped them a little bit because it was $20+ million.
Yeah.
They will have more pitching because Cole will be back at some point, and so you will have Cole and Fried and Rodon.
You'll have a full year
and
of Schlittler.
And Clark Schmidt if he can stay healthy. The only thing I would say about that is they're all 3 or 4 of those guys. I think Rodon, Cole, and I think Schmidt as well are going to miss time next year at the beginning of the year. So, like, you're relying on them all coming back, and we know how pitching injuries can be. All of a sudden, he'll be back in June, and all of a sudden it's August, and you're like, where is this guy?
Right.
So you're relying on that to be the improvement, the pitching to be the improvement, and there's a lot of injuries there. This is a team that won 90 games. They're the best team in the American League on paper. So I guess running back's not the worst thing in the world, but it's not the most exciting.
Yeah. I think the one thing is, listen, first of all, with Bellinger, this was the best fit for both sides. Makes a ton of sense. And, you know, the deal happened, I think, what was it, like 8 hours after the Luis Robert trade? Like, it happened immediately. Once Luis Robert got traded to the Mets, I think Bellinger knew no one was going to give him 7 years. I think for the Yankees as a whole, you hope the getting Cole back and a full year of Schlittler, and you hope your pitching can carry you. They still have some bullpen issues which need to be addressed, but running it back to me is interesting. This is a team that didn't win their division last year. On paper, they're a very good team, but they couldn't quite put it together, and that's with Trent Grisham having the best year of his career. I think most of the teams in the AL East have improved from last year. I don't really know if the Yankees have. They're running it back. They need Trent Grisham to have another phenomenal year. They need Cody Bellinger to have another phenomenal year. And they need their pitching to stay healthy. That's a lot of ifs. On paper, yeah, this is one of the better teams in the AL. There are a lot of question marks with this team.
Yeah, the last thing I'll say about them, and we got to move on, is the other thing is not only the pitching improvement, it's not a big deal, but I do think having guys like Caballero and Ahmed Rosario for a full year and having McMahon for a full year at third, you could argue that, okay, we only had those guys for half the year last year. Now we have them for the whole full year. They're a deeper team. But again, is that the most exciting? Not really. We'll be right back. All right, welcome back to 10 for 10. We're going to touch on the Knicks real quick. It was not looking good. I went on a big rant last week about getting Karl Anthony Towns out of here. I'm still not happy with Karl Anthony Towns. I'm going to say that right now. And there's something seemingly off with this team. They need to make, even if it's not a big move like that, they need to make a smaller move, in my opinion. They lost 9 of 11, and we were going to be on here talking about how bad it was. And then all of a sudden, after a 4-game losing streak, they pulled out the biggest win in franchise history. They beat the Brooklyn Nets by 54 points,
Yeah.
120 to 66. Now, am I going to sit here and tell you we beat the Nets? It's all good. We're all good now. No. It was good to see, especially by that much. And also, I don't like the Nets because they thought they were going to take over New York, and that was cute. But a step in the right direction. I still am even despite it's crazy if you told me that they would beat a team 120 to 66 and I still wouldn't feel great. That's kind of where I'm at. I still don't really feel great. They need to use this to take another step forward.
Yeah, I think you want to see them be a little bit more consistent. We've seen this team be really good at times, like last night or when they won the NBA Cup or whatever it is. And then we've seen them struggle at times, the 4-game losing streak. You know, they've had some issues with Karl Anthony Towns. You want to see them be a little bit more consistent before you can start feeling comfortable about where they're at, especially because I think the Eastern Conference looks a little better than we originally thought it was going to be at this point.
Yeah, absolutely. And now when I said we were going to talk about the Knicks quickly, I meant it. We'll be right back after this break. And we are going to rip through here with the college teams, starting with men's basketball. And again, we are recording this on Thursday, so every team is playing a game tonight.
Plays tonight.
So if you watch this on Friday, there's going to be a game that we can't talk about. For Siena, it's Marist at home. And, you know, this was Siena was kind of starting to putter a little bit. And I think in their last two games, we've seen the shots start to fall. They shot 72% in the first half against Fairfield. They ended up shooting over 60% for the game. They won 85-77. They beat Manhattan 74 to 59. And now look where they are. They're 6-3 in conference play.
Yeah.
I think we're seeing, and they still haven't gotten all their guys back, a nice step in the right direction for the Siena men's basketball team.
Yeah, absolutely. They lost their first two games at home in the new year, and you could tell that was eating at Jerry McNamara. And the other thing was that they were missing their open shots last week.
Yeah.
You know, we talked about it. He said in his post-game press conference after Sacred Heart, we're missing open look after open look after open look.
Yeah.
That changed. They won big on Monday at home, and they won big on Saturday on the road, and they shot the lights out of the gym. It's a really good sign for this team.
Absolutely. For the Albany men, we recorded on last Thursday, so we didn't talk about their win over Binghamton, who not the best team in the America East.
No, but they took care of business.
They took care of business, and it was never close in the second half, and they took care of business. And then they followed up with the best win in Dwayne Killing's tenure, I would say. I think he said that as well. Beating Vermont, who is a perennial favorite, even though Bryant won last year, a perennial favorite in the America East. They were picked to win it again this year. They've won it a bunch of times. I don't even have the numbers in front of me, but they've won it a lot.
Yeah.
And to have them at home and beat them at home in front of a nice crowd at the Broadview Center, it's the kind of win that you need to take that next step forward, and is again a reason why it's tough to look at non-conference records or overall records and see that they're 7-12 because of all the top teams they played.
Right.
They're 3-1 in conference. They're in position, tied with a bunch of other teams at the top of the conference.
Yeah.
But this is the kind of win you need to take that next step. And they had a sizable lead in this game. Vermont came back, and they were able to hold them off.
Yeah, I think when you look at last week, they started with big win over Bryant, big win over Binghamton, who are two teams at the bottom of the conference, and you go, okay, that's what you want good teams to do against the lesser teams in the conference this year. Now can they do it against Vermont? Are we really buying into this? They delivered against Vermont in a big way, and that's the type of win that puts you into that conversation of this could be a team to be reckoning with when we get to the playoffs.
Absolutely. And for the Albany women, moving on to women's basketball, not what they're used to. They have lost 3 in a row, again, teams at the top of the conference, Vermont, Binghamton, Bryant, they have had their conference schedule front loaded. So you have to let these things kind of play out. They're 11-7 overall. They've lost 3 in a row. They're 1-4 in conference play, which is not a place that they usually are. They lost 2 games in conference last year, 3 the year before. But again, like I said, this is a very young team. They had their schedule front loaded in conference.
Yeah.
They've played all 3 of those games in a row were on the road.
Yep.
So they play Maine at home tonight. If you're watching it, it already happened. But I think a big stand here this weekend at home against Maine, New Hampshire, to get a couple home wins and get back on the right track.
Yeah, I think this team needs a win just to kind of settle things down, right? When you look at 1-4, you say, all right, this is a team that's really struggling. Mm-hmm. They've been in these games. They've played Vermont twice already, played Binghamton and Bryan on the road. Those are their 4 losses. Those are 3 teams who are all at the top of the conference right now. So, it can be deceiving. They've played probably about as tough as a schedule to start America East play as any team. So I think, a little bit of patience with this team. A win this weekend would go a long way to settling things down.
And then finally, we end with the kind of up and down Siena women's team, now 5-4 in conference. They split over the last 2 games. They beat St. Peter's. They ended that 3-game losing streak after their big winning streak. They beat St. Peter's 74-47 and then lose to Fairfield on the road 86-50. This is a team that's, a young team that's building something, and there are going to be up and down moments, and that's what we've seen.
Yeah, especially with a team where when they're playing well, they are shooting the lights out of the gym, especially from beyond the arc, and they're forcing a lot of turnovers. And with a young team, sometimes those things come and go. I think when this team plays well, they play really well. When they've struggled, and the other thing is Fairfield is one of the better, if not the best team in the conference. That's always a tough game regardless.
And then we've got about a minute here to talk about hockey. Obviously a big one in the Capital Region, the Mayor's Cup, RPI, Union. There's really not much else you have to say. A lot of this is just, this is not a game the league points are not at stake. The Union men have had a better conference slate so far, so they want to keep it rolling a little bit. Although they're 5-7-1, RPI has struggled, but this is the kind of win that can turn around their season on the men's side. The women's side, both teams have been toward the bottom of the standings, but again, that makes this game even more important because this is your Super Bowl, so to speak.
Yeah, you can go to the cliche, throw the records out the window. Both teams want this desperately. Union's won it 4 years in a row on the men's side, so RPI is desperate to get it back. Union, they've known nothing but winning in this game. They love this feeling of winning the Mayor's Cup. And for the women, both of them being able to play for a trophy at this time of the year, especially when you're struggling in conference play, it can be a springboard going forward if you're able to come out on top and lift the trophy.
Bragging rights, trophy, Mayor's Cup.
Doesn't get much better.
We have gone 10 for 10. Thank you for joining us this week. We'll see you next week.